Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Confidential here, and the Against the Grain podcast is back, and I'm with Sean Wasserkrug here from the movie Crusaders. We're going to have some fun with this one because I feel like we have pretty similar tastes. You know what I mean? There's nothing that we really differ on too much, you know, but...
There's a pocket. There's a pocket of things that you love that I don't like or that I love that you don't like. But for the most part, I think we're pretty okay.
Exactly. So tonight's an interesting one. So initially, I wanted to do Super 8 for my first time watch. And you're like, I just can't imagine you disliking that, so go with something else. So
well, you said you like Stranger Things. You know,
you're
not
like, wrong.
You like Stranger Things, you're not gonna hate Super 8. So
well, my thought process is I like Stranger 8 because it was a show. I had enough time to connect with them. It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, it's a 1 and 2 parter. Plus, it's based on a book, and it's Pennywise specifically. You know what I mean? So you have that connection. And then I'm not the biggest fan of E.T. I don't dislike the movie per se.
It's not E.T. It's definitely not E.T.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying in terms of the vein of child
kids, but like the alien is not E.T.
Okay. Well, like I said, I had no idea, which is also a reason why, you know, I was like, I'll give it a shot because I've never even really considered it. But you swayed me away for it, so I'm going to watch that just on my own time. So today I watched 300 because, well, let's put it this way. I'm not a big Zack Snyder fan.
Let's put it this way. There it is.
Well, that makes it even funner, the conversation we're about to have, because it's all right at best. Like, I'll just start there. Like, it's fine. I was actually talking to Jay Burns about this just in Messenger when I was just having a chat and I was watching the movie. I'm like, the best part of this movie is the quality of the abs. Like, they're fantastic. They just stand out and they're doing their thing. You know, that's the best acting.
Did you see the workouts? Did you ever check the Spartan workouts that they had put themselves through? It's nuts, man. Like, they made all them work their asses off for these roles.
I'll have to, because abs are definitely the one thing I'm lacking. I feel like I'm in fairly good shape, but abs is definitely what I'm not working with there. So when I went into this movie, my thought process was, all right, it's a Zack Snyder film, which uphill climb. And I just don't really care about period pieces as much. And, you know, and I'm not a huge action guy, so when I went in, I was like, I don't know, it's gonna buy me, you know, let me get in on the characters, you know, it's got that family element, like I love Game of Thrones, so that's like the one element of like that period that I do like, so I was like, you know, and then Lita Headey's in it, so it's like, there's that connection there, so maybe, and there was just something missing, so I was thinking about this, I was like, the entire film, if you've ever seen Hellboy 2, where they have a kind of like a little cutout where they're doing a little explanation of the backstory of the angel and all that stuff, it felt like that's what 300 storytelling was, structure for the entire movie of 2 hours. And I was like, it didn't feel like a coherent like film. And it's not a bad thing. Like, what it was doing was fine. The action was technically good and like whatever, but I just didn't have any connection to it. So my question to you is, you have this as a 5-star, you have it as a poster. Like, what is it that really connects to you with 300?
Well, you gotta remember this. It's a comic book. It's not a series. It's a graphic novel that's about this thick. So you can't attack the story. It's not like Watchmen, where they left so much on the cutting room floor, or anything with the MCU or the DC where there's thousands of stories and they're just picking and choosing stuff. 300 is a but Sensei is a lot bigger. But 300 is one story, and it's about this big, and that's the story. It's a simplistic story through and through. So in terms of it not being cohesive or it being not as well thought out, that's nothing against Zack Snyder or even the scriptwriters. That's Frank Miller's book. That's what it is. That's all they have to go off of. It's not, they're not going Game of Thrones season 7 and 8 where they're just we're just gonna write our own story, which they did in the sequel. That sequel is not the comic book. That's just something like, hey, let's make some extra money on 300 and let's do this. 300 is the comic, and that's the story that we get pretty much in a nutshell. And that is why I think, and for the most part, is they stayed true to it for the most part. And now, granted, I have not read the 300 comic book in a while, so if someone's going to go, oh, this is all wrong. I'm just going off of base memory. I just really enjoy it. Zack Snyder, I will say this, and I said the same thing about Zack Snyder, is same thing with Michael Bay, and
we'll get to that later.
There's one other actor, there's one other director. They are really good at certain things. Michael Bay is really good at action sequences and explosions. Zack Snyder is really good at cinematography and making shit look good. A director for both, not so much, because they get to kind of do too much.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Justice League Snyder Cut, which I liked it, but you could tell it's like someone needed to pull him back. But it's one of those things where he makes it look fantastic. He does. I'm not saying that the direction of Zack Snyder's fantastic in this, but his choices that he chose to do to make this feel fantastical in a sense, whereas like you're seeing certain characters like, well, that's not real, but that's the way the comic book portrayed it. Like the guy with the saw arms and the goat dude playing the flute, like that's the comic book. Like it's weird, but that's the way it was, you know. And with the acting, I mean, let's put it this way: I never saw Phantom of the Opera, 2004's Phantom of the Opera, so this was my introduction to Gerard Butler. This was also my introduction to Michael Fassbender, who were two of my favorite characters. And to me, what makes these things so great, and it's probably like, oh, this is what makes people love things more so than others, and it's a cheap ploy, but you know what? It worked for me on this film. The dialogue or the quotes, it's endlessly quotable. I love the quotes in this film. You know, our arrows will block out the sun. Well, then we'll fight in the shade. Like, beautiful line. And of course, they follow it up with the shields. And they go, "You said we'd fight in the shade." Like, it's great. It's great lines. I mean, who hasn't wanted to do the Spartan kick? Going, "We are Sparta." I mean, who
Definitely
hasn't
memorable.
wanted to do that? I mean, hell, for me, and this is a little side story, I used to play NCAA football religiously. Loved that. And my best friend and I, we'd always do like dynasties and stuff where we pick like a 1-star squad and make them big. Well, one of the follow years, you could add audio clips to your stadiums to make it a little more kind of personal. And I always did the San Jose Spartans. And I took all the audio clips from 300 and put them in my stadium, and nothing gets you rolling when you roll your defense out, and it's "dine in hell" quote, or "give them nothing, take from them everything." It is so many fun quotes in the film. The action sequences, like I said, Snyder knows how to make stuff look good, and those action sequences look fantastic. I love the story. It's an underdog story. Granted, these underdogs thought that they were the favorites because they thought they were untouchable. But once again, you're going 300 against a million for the most part against this. But you're seeing the cracks happen. But here's the one thing that you never saw happen. None of these 300 guys, or 299 guys, never, ever doubted Leonidas. It is a strong, cohesive unit. Not a single person except for the Greeks. Another great scene where he's like, "What's your profession?" And we're all, "Ugh." You know, great moment right there. They live and die based off the decisions of Leonidas. And no matter what Leonidas decides, these Spartans are going to follow him to their death and glory. They are willing to put everything they have into it. And Gerard Butler has to sell that. He has to portray that. Because if you don't have a great Leonidas to sell that and to make it believable, then the movie doesn't work. And Gerard Butler does a fantastic job. He's built his whole career off of this one performance. Fassbender, he was the cool character, and then everyone goes, "Holy crap, was that Michael Fassbender in that movie?"
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. You know, and then you got what's his name, David from Lord of the Rings. He's the talker, the one who lost his eye. David Wenham in this. He's phenomenal at talking. His whole speech at the end was great. Lena Headey, she gets to be a badass, and I think this helped her get Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Sarah Connor Chronicles after this, but everyone who is a focal point in this film does a fantastic job. Dominic West is kind of the sleazy jerk, you know, who kind of, and he gets his comeuppance, and it's great. And then also Xerxes, played by Rodrigo Santoro, he does a great job of being this golden god. And everything is through. It's like, if you're not into this kind of action or this kind of spectacle of a film, then it's not going to be for you. But for anyone who likes this kind of stuff, or to me is a huge fan of Sin City, which I love Sin City, this is right in your wheelhouse, and it's done by the fantastic performances of the cast and the great action sequences. It just might be not in your wheelhouse when it comes to like the randomness of like the Oracle Girl, or when they go to Xerxes' little like palace tent with all the weird crap happening in there. If you're a fan of Spartacus, Blood and what was it, Blood and Tears, or Blood and Sweat and Blood, or the Spartacus franchise on Starz, If you're a fan of that and you don't like 300, I don't know what's wrong with you, because what Spartacus did wrong is that they tried to be too much like 300 to start, and it fell apart. And then it decided, we're not going to be 300. We're going to respect 300, but we're going to do our own thing. And that's when Spartacus got better, because everyone tries to copy 300 because of what it did and what it started. But 300 is its own beautiful little film. And I don't think the sequel is nearly as good. My Weekend Crusader partner, Brian Michaels, thinks the sequel is actually better. I disagree. But to me, 300, for what it is, and like I said, it's a comic book. It's based off a comic book that's this thick. I have the hardback cover upstairs. I think it's perfect for what it is.
And
I love it.
I'll meet you there. I'm like, that's my thought process on this movie. I'm like, it's not my thing, but it's doing exactly what it wants to do. Like, it's not pulling any punches with its approach and its style and its goals, and I give it immense credit for that. So it may not have reached, like, it could be one of those things, like on rewatches, maybe I get those connections, I feel them more, but off the bat, like, I didn't have that, and I didn't, like, other than the one lovemaking scene, and then the general king and queen, dynamic between Gerard Butler and Lena Headey, that I didn't really feel that true connection, and, like, the chemistry was decent, but there was just something missing. So, like, whenever he was off and she was doing her own thing, and then she had her scene with Dominic West towards the end, it just, I don't know, it was just something missing for the entire time. So I don't know if it was just one of those.
You have to kind of go with the same thing with the other Spartans. She believes so much in what Leonidas is and who he is as a husband, as a father, as a king, that she's willing to go to those lengths to help him out and save him. We don't get that much time in Sparta because the comic book doesn't give us that much time in Sparta. Could they have deviated away from the comic book and done more? Sure, I would have been okay with that. But that's where we see it, is that even I'm blanking on Lena Headey's character's name, Gorgo. Such a weird name for Lena Headey in that film. But
not great.
Because we see how these 200 men are willing to put their lives on the line for Leonidas, we expect that, if not more so, out of Gorgo. And we see that in the film. It might not be portrayed on screen as well because it's so quick to get them to the war, but Lena Headey's performance, even in those small moments with Gerard Butler, I think do enough to stabilize that. I think for you, what you kind of had to get into, and maybe and I think maybe after multiple watches or we going back to it a little bit later will help you, is you have the stigma of Zack Snyder in your head going into this, which at the time, all you had of Zack Snyder was Dawn of the Dead, which everyone loved. You didn't have the DC or Sucker Punch or any of these movies that people hated. You just had Dawn of the Dead. So this being the follow-up to Dawn of the Dead was like, oh my God, Zack Snyder's amazing. Zack Snyder's the next up-and-comer. And then he had Sucker Punch, and it kind of fell apart. But I think that might be one of the issues that kind of maybe will hold you back on this, is you have that stigma of Zack Snyder there to pull it back from you just a little bit.
And like I talked about at the beginning, that's one of those things where that was the reason I chose this film as my second, my runner-up to Super 8, because not being a Zack Snyder fan, like, I only like 2 of his movies. Even Dawn of the Dead, I think it's fine as well, but it's also missing something. But I'm also not a big zombie guy too, so it just doesn't have that connection with me. But I really like the BVS Ultimate Edition, and I really like the Snyder Cut of Justice League, and that's it, really. I hate Watchmen. Everyone knows that. And I hated Army. Yeah, it's terrible. And I hated Army of the Dead. It was also boring. And I've had some discussions with people where, there's different aspects and approaches you could take on that, but it just wasn't for me. So Zack Snyder's just not my guy, and we're going to talk about this later with Michael Bay and just his similar approach as you tried to compare the two earlier, where if you go in with a style, then you have to either be on board with that style and that approach or not. And I'm one of the few where I was in the middle, where I was like, honestly, I do respect the style in this one. Like, everything that it was doing, the Snyderisms it was doing in this film, worked for this film because of the cartoonish, ideology. You know what I mean? In a good way. I'm not talking down, but like it's a cartoon. It's a comic book. I understood that going in. I was actually talking to someone where the entire film, you can tell it's a green screen, but there's something about it that looked like it worked. It just looked like, because of the cartoonish aspect, the comic book feel, it felt like a stage play. You know what I mean? So the background's not real, but it's kind of like a 3D, aspect ratio where it's
you
like
felt like you were watching
out.
it in a theater on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's the other thing where, just like with Hamilton not being a real movie, I enjoyed it for what it is on there, but I just didn't have that true connection to me because it didn't suck you in cinematically. So it's not a knock on the movie, it's an approach. It was an idea that they went for, and they fully committed to it, and I appreciate it. So at the end of the day, based on like how I rate things 5 stars if it's a favorite, 4 stars if I think it's an objectively good movie regardless of anything outside, 3 stars if it's like a serviceable experience, 2 stars if it was boring or just a waste of time, and then 1 star if it's utter trash. I put this as a 3-star. Like, it's a serviceable experience. It did exactly what it's going for. You know what I mean? Like, and if on a rewatch, if I get that emotional connection, I could bump it up to a 4. I can guarantee it'll never be a favorite, like it is for you, but I could potentially bump it up to a good movie. But unfortunately, right now it is just a serviceable experience because I genuinely do respect, where it went and why it went there, but it just didn't connect for me. And this is a 5-star movie for you. If you had a top 100, because I know you don't have one, if you had one in theory, would this be in your top 100, or is it just one of those on the outside?
Absolutely. Well,
no hesitation.
Here's the thing about me. Yes, I review films. I have a channel where I review movies. My whole point of my reviews is not to be the uppity critic kind of thing where I'm like stucking my nose up at people. There are certain films where I'm like that because it's so bad that I have to trash it. But for me, I base my reviews off being like the average Joe. Do I enjoy the film? Is it fun? How are the performances? How are the story? And I kind of put that into both. So when I do my reviews, 5 stars to me is an A grade, 4 is a B, 3 stars is a C, 2's a D, and 1's an F. So there are times where you might have a film that's a prestigious film where I was like, it's a really good movie. Is it something I'd rewatch again? No. So it's a 4-star movie for me. It's performance-wise, it's fantastic. And it might be a 5-star film in terms of what it was and how it was done. But is it going to be in my top 100? No. Because when I do my top 100 is not the best 100 films ever made. It's my top 100 favorite films. There might be films in my top 100 that are like, as a film, it's probably like a C- or a D. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. And it's had rewatchability, and I love that film. A lot of people will give me crap for Zoolander is one of my favorite comedies of all time. Why? Because I feel like the comedy of that film works fantastic, and I think Ben Stiller, Will Ferrell, and Owen Wilson mesh perfectly in that story. The sequel's gutter trash. But the first one, to me, is a fantastic comedy for me. It's just like some people think Monty Python and the Holy Grail is one of the funniest comedies of all time, and I think it's garbage because I don't find it funny.
Pretty good.
But I hate it. But to me, most people would probably give Zoolander like a D grade or 2 stars. I give it a 4.5 or a 5 because I love it. It's endlessly quotable, and it's something that I can rewatch over and over again with joy, and it's in my top 100. Like I said, my top 100 is not a Critics' Choice top 100 where Citizen Kane is number 1, which I call that movie basically movie melatonin because I can't make it through that movie without falling asleep. But I can see the brilliance of it. I can see it. It's just not my movie. It's not. And everyone has their own flavor. Brian, my co-host, he likes certain shitty comedies because he finds them endlessly funny. I like comedies. I need a little bit more substance to that. And there are other people who love every horror film ever made. And I'm a little more harder on horror films because I think they need to push the envelope and not be lazy. Everyone's got their own flavors, and to call people out for saying like your opinions are shit or your taste is shit is basically being a hypocrite. So in terms of like, that's why I don't like doing top 100s because everyone just judges the shit out of it, and it's like, this is my 100. This isn't your 100. This isn't your 100. It's my 100.
Absolutely.
You have the right to love and hate whatever the fuck you want. You can hate Last Jedi. You can love Last Jedi. You can hate Rise of Skywalker. You can love Rise of Skywalker, or you can be like me and think The Force Awakens was the best one of the new trilogy. Because everyone has their own fucking opinions. Just enjoy it for what it is. It's a movie.
And that's the reason why I created this show. That's literally the reason that I titled this the Against the Grain podcast. Like, our films that we're going to disagree on later, we're not
Yeah.
going to knock each other for our disagreements. We're
No.
just going to have an open discussion. This one, I'm actively pretty much telling you I don't love 300, and you're telling you do love it, but at no point are we fighting an argument. Like, that's why
No,
the inception of this show was. It's to showcase the fact that the basis of the show is to disagree, but do it in a respectful manner, and that's pretty much what you're saying there, where it's like, you're allowed to have different opinions, and that's pretty much what the film community is a bunch of different opinions or a bunch of shills on the same side. There's no in-between, and I'm trying to create that in-between. Like, let's talk about films, but in our own way, but also accepting of your own way. You know what I mean? And this is a perfect, great start to this, and I love that.
Exactly, and it's one of those things where the way the movie community is now, it's gotten so over the top toxic. That it's like, you can either be afraid to have your own opinions, or you say, oh yeah, everyone loved this movie, I love this movie, but secretly you don't really like it.
Nope.
And then you start to forget about what...
Or you haven't seen it.
Or you haven't seen it. Or you forget that you forgot what makes you love movies in the first place.
Facts.
And like your statements on 300, I can understand that. I can respect that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that you didn't just understand the movie. I hate that. I hate when people say that. Well, you just didn't understand it. No,
I only say that one or two movies because of how much I understand the movie and the arguments I hear against them. But yes, it's very far and few between when that statement is genuine.
There are certain films that hit people a different way.
Absolutely.
Like in this one, 300 hit me in a different way than it hit you.
You could say it hit you in the abs.
It hit me in the abs. Let's put it this way: if 300 doesn't make you want to go work out afterwards with the music and all that stuff, I don't know what to tell you. Because
I almost had to delay the show so I can go do a second workout today. I went and worked out earlier.
Yeah, 300 is a let's go movie. Like if you're not working out and watching that movie, and you're just like, fuck yeah, you go, Leonidas. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah.
All right, so that was a great discussion on 300 and a great start to this show. So we're gonna move over to your first time watch, and when you give us a reason why you chose this film as your first time watch, and give us a reason why you avoided. I don't want to say avoided, but why you pushed it so long, and then ultimately give us your opinion, your review.
Well, I like I said, I don't think I avoided it. I think it was one of those I just forgot about it kind of thing. Sure. Rush, which is a sports film, which for me also, it's like, I love sports movies. I watch almost all of them. But there's certain times where a certain movie will come out, and it could be one of those things where, based on when it came out, there was maybe other movies that were out that I just chose to watch, instead of this. And then it got to the point that by the time it came out, I just forgot about the movie in general. Like I said, I enjoy sports movies. This one is Formula One racing. I have nothing against race car films. I mean, Talladega Nights is funny, and it's a race movie. Ford v Ferrari was one of my favorite films of 2018, 2019 when it came out. 19. It has nothing to do with the sport of Formula One. I think movies do a better service to the sport than the sport itself, because I don't like race car driving.
Facts.
I think NASCAR is boring as shit. But
the only reason NASCAR exists is to openly drink Budweiser and hang out with your buds. That's it.
I can't disagree with that. And I can't disagree with that. It's the same way, like for you love cornhole. I think it's a fun backyard game, but it's become a big sport now.
Yep. And
I can respect that. I don't see the appeal, but other people like you and all your followers do see that. I'm not going to knock you for that. It's the same reason how I grew up to be a pro wrestling fan, and I became a professional wrestler. I did it for 14 years proudly. You don't understand the appeal of it, but you respect it. You respect the art of it. You respect the talent it takes to do that stuff. And Formula One racing, especially, because it's way more dangerous than NASCAR, you have to respect the people that do it. Now, and another reason why I kind of steered away from Rush, or maybe I didn't watch Rush as quickly, is I love Chris Hemsworth. I think he's a fantastic Thor, and when he does comedies, he's pretty funny. But when he goes and does his own films, they're not that great. Black Hat, not that great. Red Dawn remake, and there's other films that he's done. He just, for some reason, I don't know if I just can't get past Thor with him. But when he goes and he does his own films, they just, for some reason, they just don't click with me. So a lot of it was to me just going, okay, it's a Formula One racing sports film. Okay, Hemsworth's the lead. And Daniel Bruhl at the time, I didn't know who Daniel Bruhl was. Clearly, obviously, now everyone knows him as Zemo. And had this movie come out now, I would have checked it out instantly. Because it's Hemsworth and Zemo, or Thor and Zemo as race car drivers. I would have checked it out right away, especially if you had Olivia Wilde and was it Natalie Dormer?
Yeah, Dormer from Game of Thrones, yep.
Which she should have gotten way more time in this film. she should have been such a more big point in this movie. But it's one of those things where when it came out, it didn't have the cast that I wanted to see. It just kind of fell by the wayside for me. Now, when I chose it, it was because now I would care about this movie. It's something I would want to see. So when I had the choice of picking a film, this is the one that stuck out to me because, like, I probably would enjoy this movie. I wasn't actually trying to pick a movie I hadn't seen that I knew I wouldn't like. I wanted to pick something that I know I would like, but maybe just didn't want to give it a chance because of XYZ. And the XYZ or the X factor of it is Hemsworth's own films. Because, like I said, when he's supporting, like in, I know a lot of people hate Ghostbusters 2016, but he's hilarious in that film. Or Vacation remake, which was horrible, but he was funny in that
with
film.
With his massive dong.
When he's not the focal point in these films, he's pretty solid, but when he's the lead, it's not that good. And so that was kind of my idea going into Rush. Now, the film itself, I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it for the most part. It did enough. Let's put it this way. When it comes to a sports film, your whole importance is to believe the rivalry. And then when it gets to the final game or race or whatever, depending on what sports film is, are you invested? Are you on the edge of your seat? Do you give a crap about who wins and loses? And Rush did that for me. By the time we got to the inevitable final race of the season and you knew what the stakes were at and stuff like that, I was invested and I wanted to see what was going to happen. Now, granted, you do kind of run into the one situation of Daniel Bruhl's character is, for the most part, completely unlikable because he's an asshole in the movie. But you can respect him for his drive and his focus and his wanting to win at all costs, but at a safe cost at the same time. When his crash happened, first off, you knew something was going to happen. If you didn't know the true story of it, because I didn't know the true story. Now, granted, when Rush ended, I went back and I read it all, and I kind of was like giving me the full spectrum, but I didn't know that going into it. You want to like Chris Hemsworth's character because he's the fun one, he's the popular one, he's the one that gets the hot chicks and stuff like that. Which, granted, I think Daniel Bruhl's wife in the movie was gorgeous,
Bad.
but
good for him.
There's no reason to like Daniel Bruhl's character in this film, but you have to respect what he does and what he goes through and how he overcomes it. So when you get to that final race, it's one of those things. It's like you respect Daniel Bruhl, but you want Chris Hemsworth's character to win. And I'm saying their actor names because I'm blanking on their character names.
James Hunt and Niki Lauda.
Yeah, James Hunt, Niki Lauda. You don't want Niki to win. You want James to win because that's what he's been striving for the entire time. But by the end of the movie, you get that. You kind of see where Niki was coming from. And you kind of see, like, maybe Niki should have won. Because maybe James would have been even hungrier. And maybe James would have stuck in it longer had he not won it back then. Plus, I also like that, unlike in other sports films where they always have to win the race, and if you win the race, you win the championship, they didn't have to win the race in this because it's a true story.
Yeah, he got third.
Yeah, James needed to get third, and Niki needed to get fourth.
Yeah.
If Niki would have gotten fourth, then he would have still stayed above him. And but to get the story that we got out of it inevitably, I think it was well done. I do think that the story, at least for the first half, is not as strong, and maybe could have established Niki a little bit better, because all we really find out about Niki is that he was a rich kid who wanted to be a race car driver, and his parents said no, so he just went off and did his own thing. I think they could have maybe established his his determination and love of the sport and why he wants to do what he wants to do in this a little bit better, except for the fact that he was like, I want to be a race car driver, and his parents like, no. He's like, fine, then don't fund me, and then boom, he's like the best kind of thing. Whereas with James, we got that because I think the movie wants us to root for James, whereas Nikki is this obstacle. But by the end of the film, Nikki's more than an obstacle. Nikki is a full-fledged character. I just think in the first act of the film, the movie does Nikki a disservice by not giving him more. Now, granted, we get to see like him, become why he's so good and him moving up to Ferrari and stuff like that. I just think his purpose for wanting to be the best and all that, I think they could have done a little bit better of that. I think Hemsworth does a admirable job as James Hunt, especially when you read up on how James Hunt was. I think Hemsworth probably did it the best you could possibly do in terms of portraying that real life person. The race car sequences, they're not 4v Ferrari great, but I still think they were really well done. And I enjoyed it for the most part.
So, Rush, spoiler, it's in my top 100. Like, I love this movie so much. So, it's my best comparison for this film. It's going to be a stretch if you're not on board with this immediately, it's going to be weird. So I think of James Hunt and Niki Lauda like Batman in The Dark Knight, in The Dark Knight, where he's like, what would I do without you? Ripping off mob dealers, chasing cars. I'm like a cat or a dog after he hits a car. He doesn't know what to do, you know what I mean? Like, without each other, it's just not the same. So it's just one of those perfect build-ups. And like, to touch on the Nikki stuff, I think the reason that they took so long to establish his purpose and his thought process is the scene where he actually does pick up his wife or meet her for the very first time, when she just brushed him off because he's ugly, and then she ends up needing a ride regardless, how it ended up being. And then when those two dudes came by to pick him up, and they're like, oh, Niki Lauda, they're loving. She's like, who are you? Like, you don't know Niki Lauda?
She saw his self-worth at that point.
And granted, it's that part is ugly but honestly, that's just how it goes.
Well,
but
in defense of her in this moment, Nikki wasn't helping himself. Nikki was kind of being a dick in the car. That's his personality, you know what I mean? And that's one Nikki.
thing that they've never shied away. They never shied away from the fact that he's like, I'm not. He even said, I don't remember the exact line, but he has a line where he's like, I know I'm an asshole. I don't care. I'm gonna do it my way. And if you fall in line with that, that's fine. Let's go ahead. But if not, it is what it is. So in that scene,
I know I look like a rat. I don't care.
Exactly, you know what I mean? Accept you for who you are, and that's why I genuinely respect Niki Lauda's character, because it's not trying to build him up as a villain, and it's not trying to build him as a hero. It's who he exactly is, and sometimes that's all you need. You just need to see someone for who they are and accept them for who you are, but genuinely see both sides and the true spectrum of who they are. So in that scene, that's why I think that scene's beautiful, because once she's able to, like, there's a scene where he's like, why aren't you driving fast? And he's like, 'cause I don't need to drive fast. And he's like, or why would I drive fast? And then she's like, because I'm asking you to. And then that's when he opens up, and he's just being who he is, what he does best. And that's why I feel like that was the scene where if that was at the beginning, then that would be what you're asked for. But just because it was in the middle, I get why it just seemed a little bit too late type of deal. So that scene, that's where he was just like, boom, he was full-fledged Niki Lauda at that point. And that's after already building up. And being a rich kid, there's no coming. That's another thing I do like about it. There's no, like, coming from the bottom story. He's a rich kid. He just happened to throw his fortune away, essentially, to do his own passion. You know what I mean? So if you're willing to throw away, a fortune for something you're passionate about, that should explain itself enough. So that's why I love that. My favorite concept of this movie, and you see this later in Creed, is when James Hunt pukes before every race, and it just showcases that genuine fear. I don't care how cocky he is before and after, or during the race, or during and after the race, but before, he is scared shitless because he never knows when it could be his last one. He don't care if it's the middle division, the bottom division, or top tier Formula 1. It doesn't matter. He is afraid because you never know what's going to happen, and I love that. And it doesn't make it look like, it's soft or it's something, like, wow, that's so crazy. It's like, nope, that's his thing. That's what he does, and that's a subtle character moment, and I genuinely love that. And what you're talking about with the racing, I love it when they race in the rain, the scene when they're in the rain, because it just really shows like the fear. And whenever they, it does this camera movement where it's like on the ground and they just fly by, and then there's scenes where just the water just pops up, and it's just so quick and hardcore. And it's, I don't know, I love everything about this movie, and I just love the dynamic of the rivalry, and I just love everything, how they showcase that no one's a hero, no one's a villain. They have their own faults. They're not perfect, but you're rooting for them because you like them and you believe in them, and you can do that equally on both sides, and that's why I love it.
Well, in this film, and I'm glad you brought up The Dark Knight, because I saw that actually as well, especially at that moment. There's a few moments like that, but those are the moments that I loved. Is when those two just had these conversations by themselves, where one of them was like, "I need you to push me, because without you, I can't be my best." And we get that a little bit too in Talladega Nights with Ricky Bobby, and I need you to
say, I love crepes.
No, break the arm. But it's in this film, those to me are my favorite moments, where it's like, yeah, I know I'm an asshole. Yes, I know I look like a rat. I don't care. I need to beat you. I need to be better than you. And even at the very end with them at the airport, where he's like, you need to be training. Just let me enjoy it. But you are a champion now. You need to be a champion. I need to chase you. Yep. And all that. Like, I love those moments, because yes, at certain times, Nikki is Batman and Hunt is Joker, but then at the other side, the coin gets flipped and they reverse. And I love that at any moment, each one is the hero in a sense, and the other one is the villain. Mainly because James Hunt can't get out of his own damn way, and Nikki is just too damn stubborn, like Batman, to learn to adapt and adjust. And in terms of the puking aspect of this, which I know full well about this, one of the greatest, I wouldn't say moments, but one of the greatest advice that I'd ever gotten from a professional wrestler. And I'm talking about one of the WWE guys that I met. I'm not going to say his name. But he told me before every match, and he has been doing this for 20 plus years, and he's like, if you're not nervous and on the verge of puking every time before you go out through those curtains and out into that crowd, then you shouldn't be doing this anymore. You should be nervous. You should be not necessarily terrified, but you should just have those nerves on the verge of puking every time. Because the one day or the one match you go out there and it's just like, whatever,
that's when you're
then you should retire. No, it's not when you get hurt. You should retire because you don't have the passion and the love for it anymore. And at that point, it's a job and it's not what you love to do. So you should just retire and stop right then and there. And I've always believed that. And whenever I had to go out right before a match to do the curtain, I was on the verge of puking. I didn't puke because I knew if I did, then I would be cottonmouthed the whole way through the match and I would stop. But I would always puke right after the match. Once I came backstage, I would always go right to the bathroom and puke my guts out, because it was all that tense building up from about ready to go out to the curtain to the match and to the afterwards. And so seeing Hunt's character puke before every match, I didn't take it as fear. I took it as the overall emotions that he's going through at that moment, the nervousness, the buildup, the anticipation of it, the overall excitement, but knowing that you're on death's door and you could die at any moment, but you thriving for that moment at the same time, to the point where it overtakes you and you have to vomit. I understand. That spoke to me because I've been there. Yep. I've done it. And so that I don't see that as weakness. That is very true with a lot of athletes. And the moment that you go out on a game, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, pro wrestling, cornholing, I guess, if you don't have that nervousness before every match and that fear in the back of your head of maybe I'm not good enough for this, or maybe I'm just not quite there, that needs to stop. Because the moment you lose that edge, it's not a love anymore, it's a job. So I understood that immensely with James Hunt, and that spoke to me.
Absolutely. So after discussing this movie, I can tell you like it, but I just don't know to what level. So what would you rate this movie, and do you feel like there's a chance it could go up on rewatch, or is it one of those where you get exactly what you know what you got from it, and you're content with that?
I think for the most part, now granted, I think the first time I started to watch this, I was about 30 minutes in, and you pulled me away from it to make me, I think, host a match or something. So you actually pulled me away from it, and then I didn't get to watch it for 2 days. So the first 30 minutes was separated from the rest of the film about 2 days for me. I gave it 4 stars. I gave it a solid B. I think because, like I said, the first act or that first 30 minutes, it didn't really sell me. And the reason why I know it didn't sell me is because when you asked me to help you with something, I was like, sure, and I stopped it. And I went and helped you with what it did. Had it grabbed me and hooked me in those first 30 minutes, I probably would have said, nah, man, I can't right now. I'm watching Rush. And because at that point it would have sunk in and it would have grabbed me and I would have been focused on that and not been focused on moving on to do other things.
I'll remember that for future reference.
Yeah. Now, if on a rewatch, could my rating go a little bit higher? Sure. Do I think it would reach a A status for me? No, but a high B, absolutely. Which means it would still be a 4-star film for me, or maybe potentially a 4.5. But I think it'll still be kind of a B to B plus range. I think it's a very solid film. I think the performances are solid. I think the personal life stuff, like the Olivia Wilde character and that whole marriage thing. Granted, I know it was needed for the story to kind of give them something a little bit outside of the racing. I don't think it was hit as strong. I don't think it was executed as well. And because of those things, and like I said, the first 30 minutes, that's the reason why I don't think it would get bumped up to an A level or a 5-star or anything like that. Even on rewatches, I know what the gist of this film was. I enjoyed, for the most part, a lot of what it did. And obviously, as you can tell from me talking about it, it spoke to me on many levels as a former athlete and everything like that. I just don't think it's going to reach that upper echelon review that you probably want me to give it.
I mean, you're not wrong. This is one of those films when you think of like what is one of the most or underrated films of the 2010s. This is one of my first go-tos because it's just like people want to just dismiss it because it's Formula One, and you know, like Ford v Ferrari came out at the right time where it's like, oh, it's Christian Bale, James Mangold, you know, late 2010s when everyone's watching every movie, especially big ones, you know what I mean? Whereas this one didn't have that benefit, so they just ended up, oh, I hadn't gotten to that, you know what I mean? So it's currently streaming on Netflix, so if you, after watching this conversation, these reviews, if you're interested or if you just hadn't seen it, I highly recommend it, and I honestly think, Sean, you recommend it too, right?
Oh, I definitely. If I was doing an actual review for it right now, I would say if you were interested in sports films or if you wanted to see something with Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl outside of the MCU, this is definitely a movie that you should recommend and give a shot at seeing, because I think you guys would be surprised at seeing them both of them do very good performances outside of the MCU. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to save your film for last, your rated film. And I'm going to go to mine because your film's more serious and my film's more fun, so I feel like it's a nice blend. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I would go more serious, but okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. All right, so we're going to talk about my movie. I'm gonna give a couple my quick review of it, and then you can explain to me why you had it so low, if you rewatched it, and what your current thoughts are on it now, especially after hearing my thoughts. So, Two Guns is the film that I chose for Sean, because looking at his review of it, I'm pretty sure it was 2 or 2.5 stars.
I think it was 2.
And I was appalled. I love this movie. So my best way to describe this movie is this is my Lethal Weapon. Like when you guys think of like that type of like duo, the cop movie, the buddy cop, like this is the first one out of all of them. Even though technically it's not my favorite presently, at the time when I'd seen this, and like until I got big into the film community and just, you know, being a film viewer, this one was the one where I'm like, ooh, that's my thing. So I don't think it's nostalgia, even, you know, 2013. I don't, you know, I'm not going to call it nostalgia, but I don't think it's that. But I do genuinely think that this connected with me at the right time. Mark Wahlberg and Denzel Washington, the fact that A, they don't have a sequel to this movie, and B, the fact that they don't have another film together is crazy, because their chemistry in this movie is off the charts. They have so much fun doing their thing. Now, my only actual knock on this movie, and this is the first time that I had this knock because now that I'm a huge Point Break fan, I'm really getting big on Die Hard, movies like that. And even though I don't love the Indiana Jones movies, I do respect the fact that they get beat up and the fact that, they actually have that sense of danger. Where in this film, the only times that they get beat up or, actually injured are when they shoot each other. You know what I mean? So that is technically the only issue that I have with this movie, because at the end of the day, I know that they're going to be okay because they're our heroes, but the movie also doesn't really make me think otherwise as well. And that's not a problem. Like, it's not going to knock it for me, but it's also going to keep it from potentially being a top 100 movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's a 5-star movie for me because I think it's perfect for exactly what it is and for these types of movies. And if you're in on these movies, I'm genuinely surprised if you're not high on this movie, or if you're just like, oh, I forgot about it type of deal, which I understand. I recommend giving it another chance. It's quotable, like you were talking about with 300. It's one of those where it's just so much fun. Even though I don't even know how to pronounce this director's name. Baltazar Korkmaz, what he did, Contraband, right? Like, that's his other, or, whatever. He's not really a good director, but in this movie he does it. There's enough style and there's enough sense of, standing out that, it's memorable in that sense. And then just the chemistry, like I said, is off the charts between Denzel and Mark Wahlberg, and I love this film. So, like I said, let's reiterate. What you had 2 stars beforehand. Did you rewatch it, and what are your current thoughts now?
I absolutely rewatched it, mainly because I couldn't remember it. I couldn't remember the movie. I kept getting this confused with Safe House, the other Denzel film with Ryan Reynolds. And it was one of those where even on the rewatch, part of me was like, did I see this movie before? Like, because I don't remember anything that's happening. Like, I don't remember what's going to happen.
That sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, like I remember I was talking to Brian while I was watching this, and I was like, dude, I don't know if I saw this or not, because I don't remember jack shit about this film. So it felt like a first time watch for me, because I couldn't, honest to God, remember it. I really couldn't. With the film, I love Denzel. I do. I love Denzel Washington. I think he's one of the best actors we've ever had or ever will have. There are certain films he does where I feel like he does kind of release the gas a little bit and just kind of is an autopilot. And then with Wahlberg, he's hit or miss with me. I want to like him and everything, but he makes some shit films. And then he does other films. And then he does some other films that just straight up piss me the fuck off. Like Patriot Games. Or the last 2 Transformers films. Where I go... What? Are you talking about Patriot Games?
Patriot Day, but
Patriot Day.
You didn't like that movie? Hold on, just real quick. You didn't like that movie?
Sidebar. I despise that film, not because of the story, because it's a very important story. It's a true story, and I get that. But to have Wahlberg put himself in that film as a non-real character and have him be the one that solves everything, fuck you, Mark Wahlberg. That pissed me off to no end. You could have actually had he could have played one of the other cops that's a real cop that maybe helps solve the case of the Boston Marathon bombers. But no, you had to create a character that's Mark Wahlberg, who's just magically in all the right places at the right time and just all of a sudden solves everything for everyone on where everything's at. It's disrespectful to the real people who did that, or who were a part of that and did that, and it's egotistical in my eyes.
All right, I'll cut you off there. Now I need to rewatch it with that in mind, but move back on to Two Guns, and we'll maybe do a review of that, because that'll be hilarious.
There's no review. I hate that fucking film, and it pissed me off on Mark Wahlberg for the longest time.
Two Guns.
But New Guns... New Guns is one of the Mark
Two Guns!
I said New Guns, I did. Yeah. Two Guns is one of the Mark... You're out of focus.
I know, we'll figure that out. Go ahead.
Two Guns is one of those movies where I like Wahlberg's performance because he's having fun. Yes. His dialogue is enjoyable, and he's a joy to watch, and a lot of it is him having to just kind of piss Denzel off, and I enjoyed that aspect of the film. I think those two. I think those two people work really well together. I love that first scene in the diner.
Yep.
Where he's like, I don't want pancakes. Get him pancakes. I don't want pancakes. Or, tip the girl. Did you just do what I think you said? Man, that's messed up. And like, I love that dynamic from right there. So when in terms of Denzel and Mark Wahlberg together, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Denzel on his own, when he's kind of doing his own side story, that's where I think we're kind of getting that situation we're talking about, where I feel like Denzel's kind of taking a little bit off the gas and is kind of just going in autopilot. I feel like when he doesn't have Wahlberg to basically bounce off of, I feel like his character is just kind of going through the motions until we get him with Mark Wahlberg again. His scenes with Paula Patton, I don't believe their relationship. I don't believe his sadness for inevitably what happens to her, because I don't believe his true feelings for her in the 2 or 3 scenes we actually get of them together. I think Paula Patton does a solid job in her performance. I don't believe their quote unquote relationship. So when we get to the inevitable endpoint of her character, I think Denzel's just more pissed that it happened and not like heartbroken that it happened. I don't think they did a good enough job of establishing that. Bill Paxton, I love Bill Paxton. I did not care for Bill Paxton in this film. I thought he was just there to kind of be funny. And I love him when he's funny. I love it. I just, for some reason, his choices in the movie just didn't work for me. James Marsden is...
Hold on, real quick. There's a quote in this movie that Bill Paxton says that can be said to Schmoedown competitors. Why are you wearing those glasses? Sunglasses? Don't you realize it makes you look like assholes?
Bill Paxton as a person is always quotable. And I'm not saying that he didn't have some good quotes. I'm just saying his, like, the reason that the way they made his character, like, I don't want to say it was like an accent, but just kind of like aesthetically, like the way they did his character, it just didn't work for me. And I usually love Bill Paxton, and for some reason his performance in this film just did not gel with me. James Marsden, he's to me is like the MVP of being like the second guy in a movie, like the ex-boyfriend or potentially the guy who was gonna get the girl but just doesn't. That's James. I mean, look at Cyclops. That's basically what he is.
King Sim.
And exactly. But once again, he's another role that just like we were building up his character to a point when he screws over Wahlberg and everything, and then we just kind of forget about him for all the way up until we finally see him again. They just kind of not ignore, but they feel like his character just is not important enough to the story. But it's like he's the one that is kind of forcing Mark Wahlberg's hand in this, but then we don't see him again for like an hour after that. So once again, it's a missed opportunity of the film by taking one of the quote-unquote villains of the film and just not using him for the rest of the way. He could have had 1 or 2 more scenes like Paxton does in the film, and they just don't use Marsden to their advantage. Like I said, for the most part, when we get Wahlberg and Denzel on screen, I enjoyed it. But I also wasn't crazy about all the screw jobs. What's up, Brian? One of the things that really irks me on a lot of films, and I think it's No Sudden Moves, the recent one that just came out. Screw jobs and like people screwing each other over and going behind people's backs, that's all well and good. But when you do it so many times in a movie, it just starts to become redundant and over the top. Like, don't trust anybody. Okay. And I feel like in this film, there was one too many. I don't think the Paula Patton screw job was really necessary or needed in the film. I felt like they could have done everything and everything still would have gone right the way it would have without making Paula Patton basically screw over Denzel and Wahlberg. It was just an unnecessary added basically untrustworthiness of the film. I thought they just did one too many. The action in the film, decent. It doesn't do anything to kind of, blow you over the top with it, but I think it was solid. I would not put it anywhere near Lethal Weapon, personally. But it's fine. It's fine. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. But I absolutely did not remember it at all. But yeah, that's just my
So
general thoughts.
we didn't bring up Edward James Olmos. His character Poppy
He's
Greco is
there.
just it's no I think he's so good. Like to see where they're fighting,
He's
he's like
good.
I
He's
hope you
good
like
in
the
the
taste of
portal.
balls. Because I'm gonna cut your balls out and put them in your mouth. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put his balls in your mouth and your balls in his mouth. Just the chemistry that they have with each other and everything. Like in the scene when Denzel goes to get the money or get the coke for the passports and how they're just back and forth. He's like, you're I know a guy, Bobby. You know what I mean? And just the chemistry that they have, like it's simple, but you believe that they've been doing deals. Like you know what I mean? It's not like it's the first time. And then in that same scene, like it's at the beginning, but then scene you're talking about all the quotable lines with Mark Wahlberg when he's shooting the chickens, and he's talking to the guy. He's like, just because you put your finger in your belly button, just because you put your finger exactly, just because you put your finger in your belly button, brown shit to come out, don't make it your asshole. Like what? Who says some stuff like that? But it's just so like he's just like and then when he hits him, he's like, did you wink at him? I did, because he's my bitch now. You know what I mean? Like they just have he just has that bravado, and like I said, similar to the. That how they don't get hurt, the fact that he don't miss, but that they built that up, and it's not like it's a cop out of the movie. It's something that they established immediately, and technically it's a cop out from the beginning, but at least they're consistent in the entire film where he doesn't miss. He's the cocky guy where he shoots stuff, you know what I mean, and he's just that's just how he does things, and it's just one of those things, like you said, it's not you say it's not like Lethal Weapon, but I think it is for me because it's one of those where or similar to The Nice Guys that came out a few years later, like they're just so opposites but the same at the same time. You know what I mean? The chemistry, how they flow off each other, they rip off each other. The scene where they are finally like getting into the fight at Poppy Greco's house, and then he puts the keys in the pants and he was gonna kick it off, and then he punches him or he hits him with the gun. He's like, "You saw that coming?" In fact, I did. You know what I mean? Just how they just know each other so well. You know what I mean? And that chemistry. And I love just the fact that how Bill Paxton. This fun fact. This is the first introduction I had ever had to Bill Paxton at the time. I had never, at the time, I hadn't...
Hold on. You made it to 2013.
Yep.
And I've never heard of...
I had never seen Aliens at the time. I had never seen Twister. Nightcrawler hadn't come out yet. Huh?
Terminator?
No, the first one I hadn't seen it at the time. I'd only seen the
this
second one.
This is more mind-blowing to me than anything you've said on the show so far.
Exactly.
How the hell did you make it to 2013 and never seen Bill Paxton?
Exactly.
Oh,
so when I seen this movie, I'm like, I love this guy, and he's so quotable. So at the time, like, this is my Bill Paxton, you know what I mean? So then when I see him in other stuff, it makes it even more sweet. I'm like, oh, he's got range, you know what I mean? So I think that's why I can connect to that Bill Paxton more, and I love his squirmy, like, dirty, dickheadish accent like that. I think that just adds to it. It's similar, so it's not the same thing by any stretch of imagination, but it's similar in Knives Out with Daniel Craig, where he has his accent, and it doesn't add to the character, and it's so weird and crazy, but because he commits to it, and that's just his shtick, that it just works for me, you know what I mean? So I really like his accent, and it just gives him that evilness, like the scene where the first time he does the Russian roulette, and he's like, a lot of people like to put the bullet to the temple, you know what I mean? So what if you shoot him first, and you blow your brains out before you hear anything you know? And he puts it to the knee, and then it blows his knee off, and he's got blood in his face, he's like, point and take it, you know what I mean? Or point and check, or whatever, you know what I mean? So that, just his confidence just spews out throughout this movie, which is, it's fun that, I also talked about Rush earlier, where, their confidence in their position. You know what I mean? So this is one of those movies I just love it so much, and I don't really have an issue with it. So I mean, I get what you're saying. Everything that you have, honestly, is you just don't have a connection to the film. You don't actually think anything's wrong with it. You just don't think it rewrites history, and I'll take that. You know what I mean? I genuinely will, you don't really have a complaint with it. You just think it's fine, and everything that does, it works. It may not be the best in that, genre or that take on that, action scene or crime scene or buddy cop scene, but it doesn't technically do anything offensively or anything wrong, and I'll take that. So, question...
I got things wrong with it, but
not really.
No, I already said it. I thought they did too many screw jobs and too many double crossing in the film.
I don't think that's necessarily wrong. You're just like, it's unnecessary.
It is a wrong. It's a script. It's a script problem with the film. It's too many. It's too much. Need in the film. You don't have to make it over convoluted
So the one thing this is one thing I forgot to say. The thing with the Paula Patton and James Marsden, like that's their thing. That's the reason that this whole plan started up, is the fact it was their idea to put them against each other, because they, Paula Patton's in the DEA. She needed Denzel Washington, who's already undercover with Papi Greco, to get into the bank. The Navy officer James Marsden, he's got his guy undercover, so he's got him into the bank. So they just literally put them, their undercovers, their rats, their moles, together against each other for the Papi Greco and to steal the CIA's money, which, it's one of those things where I don't think it was unnecessary. It's just kind of it comes together towards the end. So it's and they reveal it individually. So I think that's why it might come off as, one after another and just over the top with them, but it's all one story that just is revealed at different parts.
Well, you also got I think kind of the pointless, like, not the scenes. The scenes done well, but just like when Wahlberg goes to Fred Ward, and he's just like, nope, not helping you. Just kind of, it's like.
So I think that works, because it's like what the scenes is trying to say is like
that they're on their own.
Yeah, the Navy is like, yo, we can't control what everyone does, and we're not going to disperse the face of the Navy and the image of the Navy for one technical rogue officer who is going to do something illegal. His jacket now has a marker on it. You have a marker on you, so stay out of here. Stay out of our way. You're not associated with us anymore, and now you went rogue. Now we're gonna go looking for you. So that's one of those things where it's kind of like, if you think of military perspective, it's like, nope, never happened. You're on your own, and we're taking part. So them trying to save face. So that's why they kind of push off to the side.
My issue with it is that normally in a lot of films, to kind of make it complete, if they do something like that, then there's something at the end that's going to kind of go, well, we're fucking snatching the Navy into this as well, so that way people can know what's going on. And they never do that. They don't ever flip it back on the Navy for being kind of and turning their back on it. So it just feels like,
because I genuinely don't think the Navy as a whole. Because I don't think the Navy as a whole is an issue. I think it's one of those. It literally is just a rogue officer, and the Navy is like, well, like I said, like it literally says, we're not going to disperse our image, and we're not even going to risk anyone finding out about this to potentially disperse our image because of one bad egg. You know what I mean? We'll take care of it, hush hush, which, like a lot of military stuff, unfortunately. If you've seen Lone Survivor and another Mark Wahlberg movie, where it's like sometimes you quote unquote do what you got to do to save the greater good, because the Navy as a whole, especially in this film, it's trying to, say that the Navy as a whole is not the problem. It's just literally this one guy, you know what I mean? And then, so even that's why I also love about this too, Mark Wahlberg too, with he's getting chased and potentially hunted down and trying to get killed by these other Navy officers, and he's like, these are guys that I thought was my brother, and every time he beats him up and takes over, he's like, sorry buddy, or he feels bad, because he genuinely has love for these guys. You know what I mean? Because it's brotherhood. It literally isn't the Navy as a whole as a bad thing. It's just this one guy, James Marsden, who he technically got convoluted when Paula Patton brought up the idea and blah, blah, blah. So that's why I don't think it's an issue, but, technically I understand what you're saying. So my question to you is, now that you've rewatched it and technically have seen it, because we'll never know if before you've technically seen it before, have you updated your rating, and what is your overall thought on it now?
I gave it another star. So it went from like a D to a C. Because like I said, the problems that I have with it, they're not going to go away. And they still eat at me when I saw them. So, but it's definitely better than what I whenever I saw it the first time, which it had to have been in theaters. I guess I don't remember it. But this didn't like completely change my life or anything like that, going, oh my God, I was so wrong. Like I was with like other films that I've done that with. But no, it's average for me, which is better than not good.
I'll take that.
It
literally went from rotten to fresh in a sense, so I'll literally take that. So sometimes a second watch is important. So
it went from like a 40 to a 60. So
boom, that's how we roll. So if you hadn't seen Two Guns for whatever reason, or if you haven't seen a long time and you were on the fence of it's just some dumb, stupid, convoluted action movie, it still might be convoluted, but it might be a little more fun than you remember. So give it a second watch. So
I also a little thing, little not nitpick, but the whole like heist at the beginning, or not at the beginning, but like the bank heist.
Yeah.
No Halloween masks ever fit that perfectly. I'm saying that shit right now. The Frankenstein mask that Denzel wears is so perfect that he could have been like that the whole film and you thought he was Frankenstein. No Halloween masks ever wear that well. Come on, bullshit.
I said a Halloween mask. This is a Halloween mask. Michael Myers. Oh, you mean Jason? No.
Yeah, see,
Comment
those
below.
are war. That's what the way they're supposed to feel. It's like that, where there's all areas of his was like skin tight perfection. I'm just like bullshit.
Comment below. Comment below if you know what I was
well.
quoting there, and I love that reference. All right, so the main events of tonight's episode is The Rock, Michael Bay film. So we started off with one goofy, cheesy, over-the-top action director, and we're going to end with another one. So I'm going to let you talk about your thoughts on The Rock, and then we'll lead on to my opinion.
First off, I've never seen that picture before. I've never seen a Rock picture like that.
I literally went with the one that was just the most appealing to stay on screen for a couple minutes.
No, it's fine. It's throwing me off because I'm like, I've never seen that image before.
It might be fan work.
Yeah, it probably is because I've never seen any publicity photos for that look like that. But anyway, The Rock. This is one of those things, like I said, with Snyder. With Bay, this was, and I said this on this past week's episode of Weekend Crusaders. Michael Bay is not a awful director. He's solid when you kind of have the restraints on him. We were talking about Bad Boys 2 on this past week's episode, and we were saying that Bad Boys 2 was the start of not necessarily the downfall of Michael Bay, but when the Michael Bay-isms really started to show through the cracks and people started to pinpoint them and nitpick them and stuff like that. The Rock is way before that. But that doesn't mean that they're not there. There are moments that are very Michael Bay-esque, such as unnecessary dialogue, jokes that don't land, certain characters that are focal pointed in there that are inconsequential to the overall script. But that's in a lot of films, but for some reason Michael Bay just really focuses on them. I say that, but in terms of like this, and I would say like Armageddon and like the Bad Boys films and Pain and Gain, the Michael Bay-isms get outweighed by a good story, good action, and good performances. And to me, that's The Rock. The Rock, to me, there are 4 films in Nicolas Cage's wheelhouse that are, to me, like the holy quadrilogy of Nicolas Cage. Yes, I know a lot of people like Mandy, and I think Pig just came out, and everyone's loving the hell out of that. But to me, you've got The Rock, you've got Gone in 60 Seconds, you've got Con Air, and you've got Face
Off.
That is the holy quadrilogy of Nicolas Cage. And to me, the best one out of those is The Rock. Mainly because my namesake, Sean Connery, is in it, because I was named after Sean Connery. That is a true story. My dad was a huge James Bond fan, and Connery was his favorite, so when I was born, I was named after Sean Connery. And unlike in every other Sean Connery film I see, he doesn't die in this one, so I like that. But I think in terms of the film itself, I like the Alcatraz aspect of it. I think the cast, meaning Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage, Ed Harris, even the was it David Morris?
Yeah.
A criminally underrated actor. I think there's a way more appreciation than people give him credit for. Even Tony Todd and Gregory Sporleader, who I always confuse as Michael Shannon for some reason. I don't know why, but I like those villain characters. I like the to me one of the most beautiful women ever in Claire Forlani and heck, even Vanessa Marcel. They get small little parts in this, but we still get to see them, which is great. I love the dialogue in this film. One of my favorite quotes of the entire film is losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen.
Yep.
That is a great line, and that is a line that has stuck with me all these years about people who are like, I'll try. Well, you can try, but winners succeed, and this is why, kind of thing. But I like the action. I like how Nicolas Cage is not just a superhero right off the bat. He has to build to that moment. He's a lab rat. He's scared. He is right there with Sean Connery, and he's forced in the film to become a hero. And Sean Connery's just a badass in this film. And I said I like the steps that they go through to evolutionize Nicolas Cage's character of Stanley Goodspeed in this film. And Sean Connery, like I said, from beginning to end, Sean Connery is the best part of this film. I love the evolution or the story of Ed Harris's Hummel character, where he just is trying to do the right thing. He's going about it the wrong way, but he's forcing it. And when push comes to shove, by the end of the day, this was all one big bluff. He didn't want anyone to die.
That part.
He didn't want anyone to die. And that's something we don't really see in a lot of horror, or not horror films, but villains in action films, is a villain who's trying to do the right thing, just going about it the wrong way. And when push comes to shove at the end of the day, no, I'm not going to be that guy. Like, we bluffed, it didn't work, pack it up, we're going home. And it's the people around him that are actual villains. It's like, no, we're fucking doing this. Yeah. I loved Ed Harris in this film. I even love that one moment. To me, that's always what points out to me is when I watch films, it's little moments that probably normal people won't pay attention to. Is the moment when he says that, and I think it's Gregory Splendor's character, Captain Fife, is like kind of standing up, and he's like, "Stand down, Captain," and his voice breaks. He's like, "Stand down, Captain," because he breaks at that point. He's like, you can tell he's lost control of the situation. Yep. And it's just that voice break at that moment. I love that performance right there of Ed Harris there. Of course, Michael Biehn gets a great
his scene was really good.
That scene in the shower room is great. I love so much of this film. Yes, there are certain situations that are kind of unnecessary, unneeded. There are certain characters that are not important. They get way too much dialogue, like Nick Cage's lab buddy. I think he gets too many lines of dialogue in the film. Is there one unnecessary chase scene in the film? Yes, I think they could have removed the San Francisco car chase. But it's Michael Bay. Michael Bay's going to do what he wants to do. You know, I part of me still wants to know if that nice trolley man ever got his revenge, because he wants to find the man who crashed his trolley, which was Sean Connery. I don't think he ever got to, but Michael Bay made it a point for you to know who that guy was. But I love the hairdresser. I'm forgetting the actor's name, but he was on Yes Dear. But he's the one who cuts Sean Connery's hair, and they're in the elevator. I want to know, did you like your haircut?
Yeah, that one was funny.
That's such a Michael Bayism, but for that one, it worked. You know, I enjoy The Rock. I think the action is believable, except for the car chase. The car chase gets a little over the top, but everything on Alcatraz is believable. I like the aesthetic of the I forgot what they call the toxin in the film. But they did the green balls. You know, they made it colorful to a point where you understand what it is and the danger of it, because we saw what it does to people. I think in terms of a Michael Bay film, Michael Bay does in his way everything you could possibly do correct to make this as loved as it is. Because if you look at The Rock, most people are very, very positive on it, which shocked me when you didn't have it positive, because I think everyone likes Con Air and likes The Rock. Some people are kind of here and there on Face Off, and I think for the most part everyone likes Gone in 60 Seconds. So The Rock was a shocker to me that you didn't like that, because I think it's one of Michael Bay's best films.
So I'll talk with my first opinion on it. Unlike you, well, similar to you with Two Guns is, I do remember seeing it, and I do remember most parts of the movie, but I don't remember exactly why I disliked it. I just remember not caring. And by the end of this film, I do still similarly have that same opinion where I'm like, I just didn't care. By the end, I'm just going through the motions watching it. Now, were there highlights? Yes. The scenes when the toxin is eating up the guys. I think there's mainly two real scenes where you got to see like the bubbles on. Yeah, the two scenes where the bubbles on the face. The scene with Ed Harris at the end where he reveals that he was bluffing. That was actually fantastic. Sean Connery, just in general, doing his thing. He's cool, you know what I mean? There's nothing bad about that. And then the score is pretty good, you know what I mean? It's definitely, it works for what that story is. Like, it's not memorable, I'm not out humming to myself, but in the moment, like, it fit the tone and what they're going for. My two main issues with the movie still, the first one is, like I said, until that end, like with the Ed Harris thing, I didn't really care. Like to get to the point of like what they're doing, it's literally just typical. We got to stop the bad guy, and then it was at the end where they like kind of pulled the curtain back. Like no, he is technically a bad guy, but he's not pure evil. He's more like you said, doing it the wrong way. So it wasn't until the end where I'm like, okay. Now we're really revealing why I shouldn't connect a little bit. So but leading up to that, it was just a typical action movie, which bang, 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 chase, 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 talking shit. But my main issue with this movie is Nicolas Cage doing Nicolas Cage things when his character is not written to do Nicolas Cage thing. His character is written to be held back, to be revered, to be soft, to be simple, to be a guy of his job, not the Nicolas Cage, and of course I'm pissed off, and it's just like that was so unnecessary, and it was more over the top in this one than like in Face Off, where his character is that through and through, whereas this one, his character is not written to be over the top, so in his scenes, it's cringe, because it's like, oh my god, why are you, like, that, like, I was believing you to, like, oh, I'm trying to get Sean Connery to Alcatraz so we can stop this guy. I'm just trying to do my job, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be the good guy. I'm trying to be the hero, even though technically I don't want to be the hero. Like, that's not, like, what I signed up for, in a sense, but I'm here and I'm doing it, you know what I mean? So you're building up, it felt like an everyday man, or, whatever that phrase is. So when he's doing his Nicolas Cage-isms, they just stand out so much, and if it was just like one or two, it would be like there's a few, and I'm just like, oh my god, so just that took me out of it. But I will admit that initially I had it as a 2-star rating for a waste of time. I bumped it up to a 3-star rating for a servable experience because I did really, really, really appreciate the fact that the Ed Harris scene, like I can't emphasize that enough. Like that one, that really took, I didn't remember that on the rewatch. So when I saw it, I'm like, oh shit, that's nice, you know what I mean? Especially now, more Ed Harris movies I see where you just see him, like when I finally watched A History of Violence about a month ago, and he's pure evil in that movie, you know what I mean? So when you see him in this, you're like, oh, he's not just being pure evil, being quote-unquote Ed Harris, he's just doing it, his own way, so I really appreciate that. And then just the banter back and forth with Sean Connery is a lot of fun. And the action, it's all well shot. The slow motion's there, but it's not like distracting. It's enough that it's a Michael Bay film, but it's not too much where you're just like, ugh, eye roll, get it over with type of deal. There's not as much Bud Light. There's not as much American flags everywhere. You know what I mean? It's not over the top.
No, that didn't start till Armageddon.
Exactly. So
Armageddon started that stuff.
So that's my thing. So my issue, ironically, isn't technically Michael Bay with this movie. It's just, I'm not an action fan, which is ironic. When you just look at me as a person and just hear me talk, you would assume that, even if I'm not a die-hard action fan, you would assume that I just go towards action, at least, as my one or two, and I just really don't. So the action was my least favorite part of the movie, and the fact that this movie is almost nonstop action. I mean, there's thrilling moments, and there's banter back and forth, and there's dialogue, but there's, like you said, these car chases, they're just going on for too long, and you know what I mean, it's 2 hours and 16 minutes or something like that, and I was like, it didn't need to be that long for this story. So it's one of those where I don't need to, unless I have to study for trivia, if I ever get uncanceled and reinstated in the leagues, I don't think I'm going to rewatch this, you know what I mean? I got what I got out of it finally, and I'm actually on a positive note, technically, so I didn't hate the movie, but yes, it's definitely not my favorite Michael Bay movie, and it's, definitely not my favorite Nicolas Cage, especially of those four.
Well, I mean, just because you pushed back on what I said on Two Guns, I'm going to push back on you now.
There we go. Let's hear it.
They establish Ed Harris's character throughout the entire film. The entire film, they're establishing that he's not a bad guy, which is why it's a shocker that he's doing what he's doing. They are over the top, probably way too much because it's Michael Bay, basically telling that this guy is a hero, this guy's a legend, this guy, why is he doing this? There's no reason why he should be doing this because of how good he is. Even in Ed Harris's dialogue, I don't want to do this. You're forcing me to do this. Damn you for making me do this. Especially when he kills Michael Biehn and everyone, which, once again, even in that scene, he didn't want anyone to die. He was saying cease fire right away because at that point, he was just going to take him captive and put him in cell. He didn't want to kill him. They establish his character throughout the entire film, so even when we do get to the end, it's still a shocker that he's like, it's a bluff, but they establish his purpose and character the whole way through, whether it be the guys in the FBI agents in the office or the generals in the office, to Michael Biehn when I think it's either on the plane or it's when it's at the Alcatraz going, this guy is a hero. and you treat him with respect. This guy is the best of us and all that stuff. They do a fantastic job of establishing Ed Harris's full-on character of what he is and what he's capable of all the way through. It's a shock that he's doing this. They don't understand why. Like, they know why because he explains it, but it's just the why he went to this point.
Yeah.
I think they do a fantastic job throughout the film doing that, explaining his character and his understandings and the reasons he does the things he does. And didn't have to go to this point speaks volumes of how much bad shit and fucked over shit that had to have happened up to that point to push him to this level. And ultimately, by the end of the day, as we saw through all the way through, he wasn't going to go to that point. It got pushed on him. It got forced on him. The whole reason why the guys get shot in the bathrooms area is because they shot first, because of the brick falling. Yeah. Had that not happened, they probably would have survived that. And Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage probably could have released them. They could have had more help. It wasn't because of Ed Harris's guys. Everything in this film shows that Ed Harris was never a bad guy. He was just pushed to a point, and he had enough backers to follow him to basically exercise this excessive action. But never at the point in the film is Ed Harris ever evil. It's portrayed as evil, but you never actually see him be downright evil in the film. Nick Cage is not even that bad of Nick Cage in this film. Like, his Nick Cageisms is not that bad in this movie.
Like I said, I'll reiterate real quick. It's not that it's over. It's not it's so bad. It's the fact that his character isn't that at all. So the few times it shows up is crazy.
Well, literally the first shot we get of him is a guy who doesn't want to be in the office. He wants to be the hero. The first shot we see of him is him shooting a target with a gun, and basically him being kind of a rock star in this small pond. Where when the poison thing is going off, the other dude's freaking out and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And he is yelling at them, we need this, we need this, we need this, let me finish. And he's the one guy who's like, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to get this done even if it kills me. We've established his character, but the problem is that he's a big fish in a small pond in that situation, but he wants to be the hero. He wants to be this character, but he's a lab rat. And then when we get to the point where, he's out of his element, obviously, when he gets thrown into the situation. But I mean, we have his isms even before we get to Alcatraz, to the point where, whether it's in the office or even when he's with Carla, the point where, like, I think it's when they're having sex and he's just like doing his describing shit and all this kind of crap. Like, no, not at this time. He's doing the Nick Cage isms there. He's establishing the character of what this character's normally like, even before he gets to Alcatraz. And then when he gets to Alcatraz, he's pretty tame until it becomes him and Sean Connery, because at that point, as a character, the adrenaline and the fear of everything has taken over. And because he's so far out of his element. But then once he gets to the point where he sees the first rocket and Sean Connery is out of his element and the tables have turned, that's when you start seeing the cockiness of that same lab tech. That same lab rat of I think we should have God on our side here. Because at this point, he can start being the dick to Sean Connery. And then at that point, his character has elevated, has evolutionized to that point that he has that extra swagger or that extra kind of douchebaggery in a sense, because it's Nick Cage at that point. But they established that character throughout the whole film. And it's building as it goes until it gets to the inevitable point to where he's literally holding a rocket in his, or the poison in his hands, and has the balls to go, "You are the Rocket Man." Bam! Like that. Like we get that whole evolution through the whole film. I think Ed Harris's evolution as the villain and Nick Cage's evolution of Nick Cage's, I think, is rightfully shown and done the right way. It's when we get to Face Off and other films where the Nick Cageisms start to become over the top, which I love Face Off, but Face Off is literally peak Nick Cage-isms at that point where it's like, okay, you need to start pulling it back a little. But
like I said, the difference is that character's written at, whereas with this, I don't know, it just felt out of place. But, maybe it could have been one of the things. Like I said, there are a few times in the movie when I'm watching where I'm just checked out during, like, the chases and stuff. So, but then I got reeled back in. I might have missed a hint at that. So, I don't know. That's just me not being a huge action guy, and I'm just missing, bits that could have been, built up during those scenes. So, I don't know. I
It's
just
no different. It's no different than how I felt about Bill Paxton and Two Guns to the way you're feeling right now.
that's probably what it really is. Where it just didn't work for me, and it was hard to really step out of that. Where it's like, all right, let me try, and I was like, no, I'm just not feeling it. So I mean, yeah, now that's actually ironic that you mentioned that. Like that makes a lot of sense now. So I'm not hating you and your opinion on Bill Paxton and Two Guns, and hopefully you don't hate me in my opinion on Nick Cage.
If we've learned one thing in this whole video, is I can't fucking believe that this was your first introduction to Bill Paxton.
It was, and yeah,
cannot believe that.
It's not the only at this point, but like literally like growing up, I'd never seen any of, and 80s were like a big like blind spot for me, and 90s, ironically, 90s Disney animation were huge blind spots for me. Like 2000s plus has just always been my life until I started going back as a film fan and a studier of film. So I'm catching up, and there's a lot of things, and I appreciate everything that he's done, but at the time, yeah, so it was. So that was the Against Grain podcast. I think we did a good job of, this was a perfect, well, I guess the last episode with Kirk where we didn't agree on pretty much anything. Well, Francois, so we technically talked about 5 movies in that one, so we agreed on 1. This one, I guess the only one that we agreed on is Rush, and the rest were respected. We respect the other's opinions. That's the best we could do at that point, because we pretty much got barely passing grades and the favorites from the other one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then you were fine. You were good on Rush, and it's one of my favorites. So I feel like this was generally a really good episode and a really good showcasing of what this show represents. Of, you could have different opinions, and you don't have to hate each other for their differing opinions. Like, stuff happens. It's not the end of the world. But also, you can talk about it, and you can genuinely express yourself and explain why. Hear out other people's reasons why. And at the end of the day, shake hands and, move on, and let's talk about another one tomorrow. You know what I mean? So, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. We had 1 viewer pretty much the entire time. I really appreciate you. If you didn't already like the video, go ahead and drop a like. If you're watching this on the replay, make sure you check out the movie Crusaders over on YouTube, where Sean, you see in the background if you need to spell it. That's his letterbox. That's my letterbox. If you're on Letterboxd, make sure you follow us, because we're not only talking about these movies, we're talking about plenty of movies. And Sean has 2 new reviews that are going to be up later today or tomorrow. When do you think they'll be done tomorrow?
Oh yeah, no, they'll both be up by the end of the night. Like pretty much as soon as this is done,
Yeah.
there'll be 2 new. Well, one will be right away, and then we gotta edit 1 more. But there's been 5 or 6 new videos over the last 2 days that pop up on my channel.
So if you made it this far in the video, that means at that time and you're checking out the movie Crusaders, you're gonna have plenty of content over there. I'm doing there will be trivia and all that stuff over here. So make sure, if you love trivia, go ahead and check this out. The Instagram podcast, it's coming back on a weekly basis, and I'm starting up a new debate show that it's gonna be hard to explain. It's literally a 1 debate per person. It's a genuine debate, unlike this was an open discussion. You'll just have to see. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So we're trying to get as much content as we can out there, and on this journey back over here, Henry Confidential, Sean Krug of the movie Crusaders. This is There Will Be Movies, and this was the Against the Grain podcast, episode 4. Thank you very much, and we'll see you whenever. You'll be here, I'll be here, Sean might be here if I have to drag him out to co-host.